So, hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond Sunday. I hope you've enjoyed these midweek videos. I think they have the potential to really be helpful and it may be something we consider doing in the future and to continue doing. Definitely let us know what you think about this. This is kind of the episode 4. This is the final episode of our Family Rhythms series. I just want to say before we dive in how grateful I am for everyone who has listened, who has shared these episodes, who has engaged and used these resources that we've been putting out over the past several weeks. I think this series has meant a lot to our church family, and I hope it's meant something to you. And I pray that this research study that we're doing will be beneficial to other churches as well. Let me give you a quick recap of where we ended up on Sunday. So we closed out this series with a message called The Rhythm of Rest, or The Rhythm of Slowing Down is what I initially had titled it. And I opened up with a quote from Dallas Willard that really set the tone for the whole message. He was once asked what the greatest problem facing Christians in America was. And he didn't say pornography or materialism or biblical illiteracy. He said, hurry. And he said, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And I think we feel that deep in our soul, that we live a hurried lifestyle. We looked at 3 things. First, how busyness distracts us from what matters most. And we talked from Luke 10, the story of Mary and Martha. We talked about God's design for rest, and Matthew 11, how Jesus gives us the invitation, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And he invites exhausted people to create space and to trade their burdens for his yoke, which is easy and light. And third, we talked about how slowing down creates space for peace and for connection. And we looked at Philippians chapter 4, where Paul writes about that peace that transcends understanding. And he wrote that even from a prison cell. So we also were able to close out the entire series with the Lord's Supper. And I think that's just so fitting that we come to the table together and talk about that rhythm that Jesus instituted and said, do this in remembrance of me. So that's the recap. Again, we have sermon notes, family notes, devotions online, all sorts of resources that will help you reinforce what you learn. But I want to jump in to talk about some questions, right? And nobody's going to build this healthy family overnight. We need rhythms. And when we talk about these rhythms, I know everyone wants to have better rhythms in their life. But it's tough, right? And I think some questions come up, and that's what we want to address. Here's the first question today. Slowing down sounds great in theory, but my life genuinely does not have any margin right now. I'm not being lazy. I'm just surviving. So where do I even start? I think that is like an honest question. I think a lot of people are in that place right now. First, I understand, I believe you. I've had seasons like that in my life. The last few months have been really tough for me. Some seasons are just genuinely brutal. Maybe you've got a new baby, or you've got a sick parent, or a job transition. There's just some type of family crisis that you're dealing with. There's seasons of life where margin just feels like it's impossible. And telling someone in that season that they're going through, hey, you've got to slow down and do less. I know it sounds like it's just insensitive, right? But here's what I want to say. The invitation that Jesus gives us in Matthew 11 was not given to people who had their schedules under control. It was not given to people who had no stress in their life. It was given to people who were crushed. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened or heavy laden. The starting point that Jesus is speaking into is exactly where you are right now. People who have no margin. The starting point is admitting that you are exhausted and you're bringing that to Jesus rather than just pushing through it alone. So start there, not with just overhauling everything about your schedule, not with a list of things to eliminate. Start with just being with Jesus. even if it's just 5 minutes of just talking to Jesus and praying about and telling him honestly where you are. That's the beginning of this new type of rhythm we're talking about. That's the beginning of living like a sailboat, where you're receiving from God and using that to propel you forward. It's positioning yourself to receive from God rather than just running on your own fuel. You can't create margin overnight, but you can start reorienting your life toward the source of your strength. And so I think you start there and start small and build on it. The second question, and maybe some of you can relate to this. I feel guilty resting. Like maybe you were raised this way. I was raised to believe that productivity is next to godliness. So how do I push past that feeling that slowing down is just being lazy or selfish? This one I think is more common than people admit, and it goes deep because it goes back to how we were raised and what we were taught implicitly or explicitly about our own worth. And so here's the theological truth that has to replace the lie. God rested on the seventh day, not because he was tired, not because he was being lazy. I think none of us would say that, but because rest is built into the architecture of creation itself. So he declared the Sabbath holy. He set it apart. The stopping itself is sacred. If rest were laziness, God would not have modeled it and he wouldn't have commanded it. And here is the gospel truth underneath all that. Your value is not equal to your output. That is the lie the world sells us, and unfortunately, it's a lie that's crept into a lot of Christian homes and churches. Your worth before God is not tied to anything about your productivity. It's rooted entirely in what Christ has already done. He said, "It is finished" when he was on the cross. Not that it's almost finished. Not that, hey, we have to keep going. He said, no, when it is finished, the work has been done to secure our freedom and to give us our new identity. And now we are God's children. We are adopted into his family. We have been redeemed, forgiven, set free, given a new life and a new heart. And when we rest in that reality, we stop trying to earn what is already ours, what's already been given. So rest, again, it's not a reward for finishing our work. It's a response to the gospel of a God who has already done for us what we could never finish. So if we're working, trying to earn, right, approval of others, right, we have to rest in who God says we are. Here's the third question. We tried to protect family time and Sabbath before, but something always comes up. So how do you actually guard rest when everything around you is pulling in the opposite direction? I think this is a real practical problem. And man, here's what I've observed over the years. Rest does not protect itself. You have to fight for it the same way you fight for anything important. And the fight usually comes down to two things. First, you have to decide in advance, is this worth protecting, right? Is this something I want to fight for? Just having, I think we should do this, that's not enough, and you'll always schedule something else over top of it. Second, you have to learn to say no without apologizing for it. Every yes costs something. And if you go back to the message, we really kind of hit on that. Like when you say yes to one more commitment, you're saying no to the margin that makes everything else possible. So saying no is not a failure. It's not a bad thing. It's a stewardship of the time and the resources that God has given us. Jesus said no constantly. Right? Look back at his life and see how he lived. He let crowds wait. He missed the urgent to protect the important. And if the Son of God could say no without the whole world falling apart, then I think maybe we can too. So just start small again. Start with 1 hour this week, protect it. Say, we're going to put it on the calendar. We're going to guard it. Our phones are going to go in a drawer. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to go anywhere. We're just going to be together as a family. And there's a lot of good resources out there about the Sabbath and about how you can rest and do that. And it's not, and I would say this too, there's a misconception that Sabbath is doing absolutely nothing. It's doing what brings you life and energizes you. So being with your family, spending time with God, laughing, playing, there's all sorts of things you can do, but really rest and guard it. Here's the fourth question. Two more. Got 4 and 5. Here's 4. What about anxiety? I have real anxiety, and I feel like the message implied that if I slowed down, then everything would be fine, but it's just not that simple. So I really want to take some time, just a minute here, and talk about this, because slowing down is not a cure for all anxiety. For many people, anxiety has genuine medical and neurological dimensions that require professional care, even medication, even therapy. And if that is you, please pursue that care without shame. God works through doctors and counselors just as he works through sermons and scriptures. But I do think we have to acknowledge that the pace of life and the culture around us influences the anxiety and the stress and the worry that we carry. A life with no margin, no stillness, and no Sabbath, it creates the conditions where anxiety flourishes. And so Philippians 4 does not promise that prayer is going to make all anxiety disappear. It promises a peace that transcends our understanding, a peace that guards your hearts and minds, even when your circumstances have not changed. And so I would say, like, the book, I mentioned the book, The Anxious Generation, as well. And what it pulls out from research and sees is that we're facing an unprecedented rise in anxiety among our children and teenagers. That is something we've got to pay attention to, and it's something we've got to look for the root causes for. And I think, again, the antidote is rest. It's Sabbath. It's pulling away from the craziness of the world and pursuing stillness. That is part of God's design. Fifth and final question. Hey, this has been a good series, but I'm worried that by next month, everything will be back to exactly the way it was. How do you make a series like this actually stick? We did a series on margin over a decade ago, and I actually had someone tell me, hey, that was good, and I really enjoyed that, but I look at my life and nothing has changed since that over a decade ago. And so I think this is probably the most important question of the whole episode is, how do we make it stick? Because a sermon series alone does not change your family's rhythm. Information alone rarely produces lasting transformation. So what produces lasting transformation is a decision followed by a structure, followed by accountability in community. That's the whole process of discipleship, right? That decision is what you made on Sunday when you said, okay, I've got to change the direction my life is going. And now you have to say, well, what rhythm does my family need? So you have to name it. And then you have to have a structure, a specific, repeatable practice that gives your decision, right, somewhere to live. And I want to encourage, it's more than saying, hey, I just want to encourage our family to talk more. No, it's like, at dinner table, we're going to say one specific thing that I noticed about you today and encourage you. It's being that level of specificity, right? Not that you want to slow down, but like, okay, on Sunday afternoons, when we get home from church, we're going to put our phones away and we're going to go on a hike. We're going to have a picnic. We're going to just rest. We're going to do something fun together as a family. We're going to do a family devotion. It's that level of here's what we're going to do each week and then protect it. And so the accountability piece is telling someone, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your friend, maybe it's someone in your small group, your life group. Maybe it's someone maybe it's your whole family. You just say, hey, as a family, guys, we have to help each other with this. Ask them to check in with you and to hold you accountable. And a rhythm like this, a new practice that you're putting in place, has a far better chance of surviving than a rhythm you're trying to build alone. So if you want these rhythms to outlast this sermon series, You have to treat them more as a decision than a feeling. Feelings fade, but decisions backed by structure and community, they actually stick. And what we're talking about is forming new habits, forming new practices. And again, if you start one practice, if every sermon series we do, you pick one practice, one habit, one decision, and you implement it, over the course of the year, your life is going to look drastically different. Over the course of a decade, you've changed the trajectory of your life. And so let's talk about how to land this thing. So how do we implement this in everyday life? 4 things. First, let's name the one rhythm. Out of the 4 we talked about, encouragement, serving, growth, rest, which one does your family need most right now? Name it, write it down. This is where you start. All right, tell someone. Second, start scheduling your Sabbath moment. Not like, hey, we'll get to it someday. Start ruthlessly eliminating hurry, schedule it, even start with 1 hour, right? I'm not saying it's great to do a whole day, and that's the way God intended. Start small and build up to it. For me, Monday is my day of rest, and I have to say no sometimes to people that want to do things on Mondays, but it's hard to protect Mondays, but Sundays are crazy for me. And so Monday works out to be the best day for me to slow down, catch up, spend time with God, spend time with my wife. And so schedule it. Third, practice saying no. Again, like if you could take one thing from this, it's like, it's all right to say no. It's all right. You're going to let people down sometimes, but you have to protect your time of rest. And finally, come back to the table regularly. And what I mean by that, just like at church, we come back to the Lord's table. You have to come back in your own prayer life to the reality of what Jesus has done for you, that his body was broken, his blood was poured out. You have to understand who you are in Christ. Understanding your identity is going to change how you look at what you do, what you accomplish, and what you need to do. Because you're not trying to earn your approval with God. It's already settled once you put your faith and your trust in Jesus Christ. That's it for Beyond Sunday this summer. Again, we may relaunch this based on the feedback you guys give. So again, let us know if you like this. There is going to be a survey. I think I'm going to post it on Thursday of this week. And the survey is for anybody that has used any of these resources throughout these 4 weeks. If you've used any of them, take the survey. It'll take you about 15 minutes to take, because there's questions like, okay, did you use the daily devotions? What did you like about it? How much did it help you? That type of thing. And there'll be about all the different resources we have provided. And that's going to be like the basis of our my research project. And so I'll be analyzing all the data from it, using it to come up with a guidebook for other churches. So it's exciting. So again, please take the survey. Even if you didn't take the first survey at the beginning of this, take the last one. The more people that take it, the better data we'll have, and the more we'll be able to make informed decisions about what to do in the future. So this has been, we've tried to do this in a way that's sustainable. And so we picked resources that were a little easier to create using some of the tools that we have at our disposal. And so again, let us know what you like. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you for watching today. And I'm excited about what God's going to do as a result of what these new rhythms we are putting in place in our lives. So God bless.